Well, welcome to another Real Wealth podcast. This is Mike Proctor, your host, and sponsored by Leading Edge Financial Planning. This time of day, whenever you are.
Whenever you're listening to this.
I'm recording with guest Laura Ritterbusch. She is the CEO of Goodwill Industries of Kansas. Yes. So it's not it's not a global organization, but it's Kansas. It's 2/3 of Kansas.
Right. That's correct.
And we are here today to dispel a lot of myths about Goodwill Industries. I was privileged to be able to take a tour of Goodwill Industries when she gave a tour to the Bel Air Chamber of Commerce, and my eyes were opened. The scales fell off, so to speak, to all the things that they do. I had a friend who did hiring for Goodwill a few years back, and she's like, yeah, I hire people here. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, well, we have people that do jobs other than work in the stores, and I had no idea. Yeah. But Laura today is going to explain all the wonderful things that Goodwill Industries does, and the things that they don't do that people think they don't do. Because I actually, for a time, stopped taking stuff to Goodwill because I was like, it's just going to get shipped off to Africa.
Right. Nope.
But we're going to talk about that today, by golly. And we're going to learn some things that Laura's learned along the way.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you having me here today, and always look forward to dispelling myths about Goodwill because there's a lot of them out there, and they tend to get shared on social media the most. So looking forward to be able to kind of correct the record.
We're going to share this on social media.
Yes, perfect.
Awesome. Well, why don't we back up just a little bit? You want to share a little bit about your background and how you got into Goodwill Industries and some career experience and what you've been up to?
Sure, absolutely. Well, thank you for that opportunity. I hate to think about how long ago it was, but when I was going through college, I had an opportunity to do a work experience or an internship, which is one thing I think is so important, that applied learning. And I had the opportunity to work with individuals with what's called severe and persistent mental illness. And we worked through, the ability to self-calm and engage with people around them when things weren't feeling settled within themselves. And so that was kind of my first exposure of working with people with disabilities of some sort. Then I also worked in a group home during that time for people with developmental disabilities. And those professionals that I met encouraged me to consider a master's in rehabilitation counseling. And so that led me down a path to the University of Illinois. And when I went to school there, they had an opportunity for us as graduate assistants to not just help teach classes, but engage with other professionals around hiring people with disabilities and having it all be about work and how much the work and pride and purpose and dignity does to individuals with their self-confidence and their abilities, but also what it gives the rest of us as employers and peers and people, coworkers, of having someone that we work with who's different from us, but yet they can contribute and they can just brighten your day as part of that. And so after getting that master's degree, my husband and I were trying to decide who's going to get a job first and where are we going to move to. And I got an opportunity at Goodwill in Central Indiana. And that was my first exposure to Goodwill, because I also had not really known before all that Goodwill did. And so as I got a job there, I realized the power of having a social economic enterprise that, one, you can hire people to work for who need that opportunity for a job, but also then the revenue is a nonprofit that allows you to then do so much more than just that. And so that's why we have a tagline, more than a thrift store, because that is probably the most public-facing part of our organization. But that is what allows us the opportunity to do what's needed for the communities that we're a part of. So that was my first Goodwill, and this is my fourth Goodwill that I've been at. And so I've kind of worked my way around the country. They're all independent Goodwills. So we're all 501c3s that are run by local board of directors. And so our national office is a member services organization. And so they help support the network. They regulate how we use the logo, because that's really important as a brand. But then they also provide some technical assistance and expertise and ability to connect us as Goodwills. And so What I love about that is that each Goodwill can respond to their community with what their community needs. And so as I've worked for different Goodwills, we've all done things a little bit differently, especially in our mission services, because it's what that community needs from us as an organization. So my career journey, this is my first time as a CEO, president and CEO of this Goodwill. Otherwise, I was overseeing our mission services programs to support individuals who needed support in employment. And of course, each Goodwill, that looked a little bit different.
Okay.
So that's a little bit about, probably maybe more than what you wanted, but that's a little bit about me and where I've come in my journey.
That was perfect. Wow. So this blew my mind. So you talk about more than a thrift store.
Right.
And talk as long as you want. I'll try not to interrupt. Why don't you just lay out what Goodwill does especially aside from the thrift store?
Right. So our Goodwill specifically, so we have our territories, our Goodwills is 2/3 the state of Kansas. And so we, like our stores are up through Junction City and Emporia. And of course we have Andover on the east side, but then we go all the way to the border of Colorado. And so we've done some expansion out west, but there's more that can be done there. But that's really the retail side. Our mission side is what is so unique. And I love all the things that we do. And you saw yourself, it's a lot and it's varied, right? So it's all very different from each other. And so, one area that we have is our contracts department, which is unique, that I think it's important for businesses to know that we also have that area. So we actually do business to business work for folks in a manufacturing type environment. And we are ISO certified. And so we're certified just like every other manufacturer. It doesn't matter that we're a nonprofit or who we have employed for us. We meet all the same standards, which means other businesses can feel confident in contracting with us. But when they contract with us to do the work, what's awesome is what happens with that, like who has the job opportunities, right? And so we have, contract staff that are in there that maybe have a language barrier. But we have a lot of individuals with developmental disabilities that are doing work during the day. Our second shift in the evening is all for second chance individuals who have a criminal history and they just need an opportunity to get back into the workforce and figure out, how do I engage in a workforce in a positive manner so that we can help them get to that next step after Goodwill if they would choose to do so. And so, our services that surround our contracts areas really to provide work opportunities to individuals who need them to be able to move forward and to have that opportunity. Some of the other services that are wrapped around that contracts area are for people with developmental disabilities on our Medicaid waiver services. And so there's lots of organizations in this town that also serve individuals with developmental disabilities who they qualify for a state program that's with home and community-based waiver services. And so these are individuals that are not able to be alone during the day. They want work as an opportunity. And so we provide a lot of jobs for individuals during the day so that they can have that pride and dignity of work and contribution, but also learning the skills of, I'm showing up on time. Yeah. I can get along with my coworkers. I respond to direction. And so then the ultimate goal is to help them figure out, and sometimes their guardians to help them figure out, hey, do they want to take that next step to a more independent job? And what does that look like? And so as we look at that opportunity, we actually have a kind of a second layer of that program called Project Search. And it's for adults with developmental disabilities. It's with a partnership with Cintas. And so those individuals are on an internship for about 7 to 9 months, and they are learning as a group with individual positions at Cintas with one of our staff there as an instructor to support them along the way. And so it creates an environment of a little bit more independence, getting to know other coworkers that they're not as familiar with. And then from that program, we work with them on, okay, what's your next step for a job? And so we have over 90% placement rate out of that program. So individuals are then going out to independent jobs in the community after that. And so we try to create an opportunity for people to learn and move along the way.
Okay. Help me understand the Medicaid waiver program.
Yeah.
Because I was sitting here thinking, I was like, you're gonna mess these people up on Medicaid.
Yeah.
But there's a waiver. I hadn't even heard of that. That's news to me.
Yeah.
And it didn't register doing the tour until just now. And I was like, they're going to mess up. And it's like, maybe their point is to mess it up, to get them fully employed.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of complicated rules around that. So I won't go into too much detail, but when you're on the waiver, there's a cap of what you can earn.
Okay.
So you don't lose those benefits, but you can earn more, lose some of your cash benefit, but retain the medical benefit, which is what a lot of individuals with developmental disabilities need, because that benefit is what gives them access to group homes or other support for their residential side too. So we want to make sure that they can earn but not jeopardize those benefits, so they can retain that support from the state for their living arrangements as well. So
because the progression in my mind goes to, okay, so then they're going to earn too much, get kicked out of the group home, be on their own, and then what?
Yeah. So we monitor that very closely with payees and with other providers. There are things called work incentives through Social Security that you can kind of work with too. And so there's a lot around that, but there are opportunities. Most all of our individuals typically work part-time hours to help them stay within those parameters, but it still gives them more of an income that they would have otherwise. And again, for any of us who have experienced a period of time without work, when you lose that purpose and that dignity of having my own money, right, as well as I have a purpose to go to each day and to be a part of something bigger than myself, it's really an important part of what we do as part of that contracts area. You're talking about something it comes up for me. So in our episode with Dr. Paul Peliquin, so he talked about AI, and one of the things he focused in on was the dignity of work. Right. Yes.
Which is so interesting that you're bringing that up too, because if we get AI to do everything for us, then what do we do? What's our purpose?
Yeah.
But that totally relates to me, because that has got to be a tough way to live without anything to do.
Yeah. And it's just an important, we had one of our success stories. So someone goes to our website, they can see kind of one of our award winners last year, who now works in our contracts area. And his mom shared that it was awful right after high school, because he went from this full schedule of all these things to do, people he interacted with, and he was very social, to nothing. It was a big gap. So what happens for folks is that, when they're in school, there's a lot of entitlements to you're supposed to be in school all day. You have all these activities. And then when you become an adult, there's no more entitlements. And so you have to figure out that roadmap of what that looks like for that individual. And so they really struggled for a while, just because he didn't have his same schedule and what he wanted to do, and feeling that sense of purpose and that chance to interact with other people. And he's just doing great. He's one of our best workers, and we're just so grateful to have him, and grateful that we could be a support there for his family. One thing I think people don't realize either, for folks with developmental disabilities in the state of Kansas, there's about an 8 to 10 year waiting list to get those Medicaid waiver services. And so as a parent, if you haven't signed your child up young, you could have a potential gap in services between when they're done with high school and when adult services can kick in. So it's just a different level of awareness that those parents need to have about the services that are going to be required for when their child actually graduates from high school.
So did I understand that right? If somebody has a special needs child who is obviously not going to be okay to live by themselves,
right?
If you don't register them 8 to 10 years ahead in advance, then there may be a decade gap where they're the ones taking care of their kid.
Yep.
Holy cow.
And that's a big deal for a lot of families who are dual working families, right? Yeah. They don't have someone who's at home during the day to help monitor somebody. And so the schools have been doing a good job about encouraging families to sign up. Like, let's make sure you get connected. because you just don't want to have someone to have that gap in services, because it really impacts, especially if you've made a lot of progress during your high school years. If then all of a sudden you're sitting at home for months at a time, you lose that. And so it is a really big piece of importance for parents of those with special needs. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, what's causing the 8 to 10 year gap?
There's a funding issue, right? And so it's a state federal match type program. And so there has to be enough funding provided by the state to provide these services for all the people that are in need. And along with that even if, we've talked about this as providers, that let's say they fund everything all of a sudden next year, which would be a big dollar amount. The providers, it would take a long time to staff up to handle that influx of people, right?
Yeah,
So really looking at how do we start stair-stepping that to shorten that. Most states across the country have a waiting period for these types of services. So yeah, it's a challenge, and I'm grateful we can be there as an organization, and that there are so many other organizations that are also supporting this population. Because again, they have a lot to give to us as a community. They just need the right opportunity and the supports to do so. And so we're grateful that we're able to walk alongside people who are ready to take that step. So. Yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah. And that's just one set of our services. So those are for individuals with disabilities. We also provide, I talked about that community employment piece. So if someone's ready to get a job, they may not even come to our contracts here, but I just want to get a job in the community. We will work with employers on matching their skill sets with what the employer is looking for. So we have lots of individuals that are independently working all across the city and the surrounding areas that have a disability, but they're actually working in another employment setting and doing a great job and absolutely loving it. But then we start thinking about our education side. I think that's kind of the other piece that people are definitely not aware of. And so our education program and partnership, the main umbrella for that is Next Step Alliance. And that is a partnership between us and WSU Tech. And we provide adult basic education. So we help people get their Kansas high school diploma as an adult. And then we also teach English as a second language for individuals across the Wichita metro area. Last year we had over 900 students come through, and I believe it was over 500 of them spent 12 hours or more in a classroom, kind of working towards either, again, learning English or their Kansas high school diploma. So that's a big part of what we do. We have a few campuses around Wichita. We used to be centrally located at Webb Road, but that is not the most convenient location for transportation options. And so we have stood up different campuses across town to be closer to those who probably need that service.
Nice.
And so that's really exploded our numbers over the last several years because we have campuses that are more convenient to people. And so that's been a great opportunity to help people achieve that goal and dream of getting their high school diploma, as well as those that are new to our country or have been here a while and just not had the chance to learn English, to be able to learn English and be engaged in our workforce then by understanding enough English to be successfully employed.
Right. Man, it's going to bug me. I forgot who it was. I just talked to somebody the other night. So we're both in downtown Rotary.
Right. Yep.
And one of the things we do is reading is fundamental.
Yes.
And so I read is called a newcomers class of elementary school kids. And anyways, it's personal connection. But she so the person I'm thinking of, she actually educates kids of that class, but it's like, okay, then where do other people go that don't have kids where they're trying to support English in the home so that when they go home, they actually learn English or continue the learning process, et cetera. But man, they had in that one class, it was 12, 13 different languages among 15 kids.
We had over 50 languages this year that were spoken by our students.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It's a lot.
Did you have them all covered by translator?
So here's what we do to handle that, because right, we can't hire teachers and have enough translators for all of that, right? It's just not possible.
How can you do that?
Yeah. So when we do our enrollment, a lot of them will bring, if they have children, they'll bring a child with them that knows enough English, usually older kids, probably middle school, high school, or a family member or a friend, because a lot of them are getting connected through friend connections, a lot of word of mouth for our classes, because that's how they really connect and trust that we're going to be there to support them. But for other folks, we actually have tablets with Google Translator on them. And that's been a lifesaver, because they can speak into it. It may not be perfect translation, but we get enough that we can at least get them enrolled. Once they're enrolled, we have a couple of different ways that we'd engage with folks, but one of them is a computer. And so we have something called Burlington English that we use. And so it helps them hear what they're learning, and then they state it back, and it gives them feedback about how they're doing, when they're speaking it. And so, and then we have multiple levels, right? So we have that beginner level, like don't know much at all, to a more advanced type level of learning English. And for some individuals, if they know they're interested in a specific career, we can actually modify the curriculum to give them the terminology for that career that's important. So that way, if they want to get a certification or something like that, they already have familiarity with that terminology.
Man, is this at every Goodwill all across country, or is this?
It just depends. Again, each Goodwill is very different as to what they do, based upon the needs of their community and what they've been able to respond to. And so some Goodwills, because of the rules in their states, they're setting up full-blown high schools for adults. And adults are going through that time-based high school program. And those are called Excel Centers. But in the state of Kansas, they don't require us to do that, which is actually great for our students. So our students can pass what's called the General Education Equivalency Test, which the GED is the brand for it. Yeah. So they can pass those tests and get their Kansas high school diploma. And they will have a full Kansas high school diploma. It is nothing less than. And in fact, the data shows those who take that test actually perform better going into the workforce than others who've maybe just graduated from high school, because that's a time-based program, right? It's not competency-based. And so our students have to pass exams, most of them 3 to 4 hours long each, and there's 4 of them, to be able to move on and get that Kansas high school diploma. And so it's definitely like you have to have good command of the material to move on. What is really cool is that a few years ago, our Chief Mission Officer, Chris Stanier, had worked on some legislation with the Kansas legislature that if someone comes to us and they're over the age of 21, they don't have their high school diploma, they can actually bypass taking all 4 of those tests and go straight into a certification program at a technical college. So if their scores are high enough that we know they can handle the curriculum, we have a lot of people that go straight to WSU Tech, work on a certification, and then that certification counts towards their high school diploma. So maybe they only have to take 1 of those exams or an exam, and they do the work keys assessment. So there's different ways then for them to get their high school diploma that's not quite as onerous as those 4 big tests. And so it's some people graduate from us within 3 months. Some people take a couple of years. It just depends on how long ago they were in school, what they're having to relearn, and what comes up in their life. We have a lot of people start and stop to begin with, because they have a lot of barriers happening, and that we're helping them work through those, but sometimes they have to take a pause, and then we always welcome them back again. Like, let's come try it again, and we're here to support you.
Yeah, that's wild. I love that support is there. Okay, this is maybe a question that you don't have a great sense of, but just what's your feel? If you were to set me down to take those tests, could I just pass it without studying? Or the average person? What do you think?
I would say no, because we all have our skill sets, right? So if your skill set, I mean, you're financial planning, so you probably have some math skill set. Maybe you could sit and pass the math right away, but maybe English isn't as good. So there's like language arts, and there's math, and there's a civics portion. I can't remember if that's just for the high school diploma or for our citizenship pathway, but and I think most people would struggle with the civics part, to be frank. I think that's a big part that people they go through that class in school and they're like, oh yeah, I think I remembered that a long time ago. But I think most of us would have to study again to do well on the exams. So yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm not going to bet someone $100 that I can just pass it.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling that bold.
Yep. So, absolutely.
But yeah, it's like, hey, reality check. That's actually probably kind of tough.
Yeah.
To go, you have to really do stuff to study it and get your high school diploma.
Absolutely. And our instructors are amazing. So our partnership with WSU Tech is that, we hire the full-time instructors and they hire our adjuncts. They provide a lot of our technology, so that way we can connect with their professors directly from even our campuses. So that way our students, if they're trying to sign up for college, if they've never graduated from high school, most likely they haven't had someone go to college to understand what is a registrar, how do I sign up for classes. And so by having that direct connection to WSU Tech, we're able to walk them through that process and handhold them along the way, just to relieve some of those fears and help them get through that process.
Frankly, I'm still a little fuzzy on what a registrar is.
Yeah. Just kind of an odd name that you don't always know what that means.
How'd they come up with that?
Yeah.
They're like, let's run this through a focus group. Registrar.
Yeah.
That's it.
So we, along with those things, and you would think, well, that's enough, right? We're doing a lot. So we also teach digital skills. And so a lot of people going to the workforce, you need to know how to use a computer, even if you're in a manufacturing environment, right? Mm-hmm. Everything is technology based. And so we incorporate digital skills training into our classes for the classes I just talked about. But then we also have a Learn It lab, a Learn IT lab. And it is an RV that has been retrofitted to have computers in it. And so we can drive that out to any community that is a part of our territory and teach classes. We've also used it for like open interview type hiring fairs, so people can go in and fill out applications and stuff, because it comes with its own hotspot and Wi-Fi, so we can connect to the internet and bring that to a community as well. So
did you trademark Learn It?
I don't know if they did that before or not. That was created before I got here, so
that should probably get trademarked. That's pretty good.
Yeah, maybe we should consider that. I guess we should look at that.
I bet someone would help you trademark it.
Yeah.
Actually, if you go talk to Bill over at Gardner Design, I think they've got a special connection on trademarking fees through an attorney. Yeah, seriously.
I'll have to ask our staff if they did that. I haven't looked at the site enough to see if it has the little trademark symbol on it, but
that's a great name.
Yeah. So then we took all of those different programs and opportunities, and we've over the last 3 years started into reentry services. And that's specifically for those that have been justice involved. So they have some sort of criminal history. It may be recent or not. The individuals we first started serving 3 years ago were on probation and parole. That was part of kind of how we accepted them in. We started that as our Next Step Unlocked program. And that's, again, to focus on getting a certification, finishing their high school diploma, and taking life skills classes. And so those really focus on, okay, this is how you interact at work. And some of those places is different from how you had to survive where you were at. Seriously. Right? And helping someone change those behaviors.
How much success are you seeing with recidivism?
Recidivism, you did say that right. Okay. So, the first couple of classes, we really struggled. We learned a lot the first 3 years as we've been stepping out into this path. And what we have been finding is that as we interact with people, our classes have been really small, and people keep asking, well, can you serve more people? Well, yes, but not everybody's ready. And so it's a full semester commitment, and it's not just school, it's work, it's all those things and the barriers that can come up. And so we have really done some research around what are other Goodwills doing. So that's one benefit of all these independent Goodwills. Goodwills across the country work in this space. And so we can call them, we can go visit them and say, what are you doing? How is it working for you? And so what we're now doing is taking a very multifaceted approach of, okay, you don't seem like you're quite ready yet for this intensive a program. So let's get you a job at our contracts area to begin with.
Okay.
And help you just start working, right? Get some stability. And then let's help you connect to maybe your high school diploma, or maybe if you think now, okay, I'm ready for that certification program, we can get you into that. Or maybe we just need to have you in a life skills class to begin with. And so we're starting to really kind of sift through all the referrals we receive and say, what's best for that person? How can we meet them where they're at? Because not everybody's ready for a 3-month program that is intensive and the expectations are high, right? And so our instructor for that is a trained drug and alcohol counselor, and she is so committed to the individuals. And so, by the end of that cohort, they're usually a semester long, they just really talk about how they needed someone who could take a phone call on a Sunday night. And from someone who says, I'm struggling, or I don't know what I'm going to do next. And so I think until people have either known someone who's been struggling in that area or with addiction, or if you've been through some sort of simulation or something to give you just a glimpse of what that might be like, I don't think people understand how hard it is to make the change. If we think about ourselves personally, how hard is it to change your own habits, right? Even a habit of eating better or exercising more often. And they're not that hard if you put your mind to it, right? But we all struggle with those things. So then when you think about someone who has been in an environment for years, and sometimes it's generational, and that's how they knew how to survive. Yeah. That's who their peers were. So when we're working with someone, it's trying to get them, who do we get them connected to that's not part of that environment, right? How do we help them think about things differently? How do we, I talk a lot about when we have our celebrations with these groups, we want to let them know they're valued. A lot of people, when they exit the prison system or they've been in jail, there's no self-confidence. They feel like they only know what they know. I can only do this because this is what I know and what I've been successful at, right? And so
they've been successful in that system,
right?
And then they get out into the real world and they're like, wait a minute,
yeah,
this is not that.
And how many people are willing to accept them for who they are at that point in time, too? And so there is, we want to make sure during that process we instill in people that you're valued and we want you here. You can be a great part of our community. Let's help you figure that out and what that looks like for you. And so that's been, I always love our celebrations, no matter if it's 5 people or 10 people. We see kids, we see parents of maybe young adults who just tell us that this has been life-changing for them as a family. Doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. Doesn't mean people aren't going to backslide. It just means that they've seen a glimpse of hope, right? And so we talk a lot about being there for them in the long term, that doesn't matter what happens in the future, we're there for you. And so just come back and we'll support you again. So we try to stay in touch as much as we can and provide that follow-up to help them be as successful as they can. So
have you ever come across Dr. Kurt Thompson's materials?
The name doesn't sound familiar. It doesn't mean I haven't seen it.
That's okay. That's okay. Whether it's him or other, psychiatrists, whatever. But when you're talking about changing habits, one of the things he talks about is it takes more brains to turn the boat. Mm-hmm. And so that's what you guys are providing, is you're providing more people, more brains, because it's like a giant barge that you're trying to move. And you cannot do it on your own. Yeah.
Especially in the stressful environment of, are they able to make ends meet even right now, And there's just a lot of barriers for folks that are coming to our community. And people, they're going to be here, right? People are going to be in our community who have a criminal history. And so we want to help them be as successful as they can be for our entire community, so that everyone, has a great place to live and work and be a part of in Wichita. So, I think I've made it through most of our programs now, but you can hear we do a lot.
And I made it difficult for you to make it through because I keep having thoughts.
Yeah, you're fine.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're good.
You did great though.
Yeah.
Lots of speed bumps. You handled them wonderfully.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah. So we've been really focused here in Wichita. And so over the last several years, we've been expanding outside into our other part of our territories. And so we have our some services now up in Newton. We're offering them in Hutchinson, and then we're actually going to be announcing in the spring up in Emporia. So we're really excited
so that's
to
not
be
announced yet.
Well, it is now, isn't it? So whatever it comes.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
We don't have all the details there yet, but we're actively getting a potential space secured. And then we'll be able to kind of announce, like, here's a time frame and kind of what we hope to start there. And so, all of our stores have connections in their local communities where we're giving vouchers to other nonprofits so people can come in and shop in our stores for the things that they need. For a lot of our groups, we actually gather things that we can't necessarily resell in our store, but it would make sense for like a women's shelter or other nonprofits to be able to utilize those things for people in need. Even things like glasses, right?
Yeah.
Like we're not going to resell prescription glasses, but the Lions Club and other entities will actually take those and give them appropriately to people who need them. So, we find those partnerships all across all of our communities, but we're trying to go a little bit deeper as we expand more of our more intensive mission services into those communities. And so that's really the why with the retail stores. I even talked to someone the other day. They're like, well, you're a for-profit, right? I'm like, no, we are not a for-profit. We are a nonprofit organization. And so 90 cents of every dollar that comes into us through our stores goes back to the community through mission services, programming. When we talk about all those great education services, 25% of that is funded through state dollars, whether it's through grants or the Kansas Board of Regents, but 75% of it is Goodwill funded.
Yeah.
And so that's what those dollars come back and support are those key initiatives.
Okay. So the other thing is with Goodwill, actually, I don't even know if I want to admit. Look, sometimes there's things on the shelves that are priced really low that should be priced much higher.
Yeah.
But
yes.
much higher.
Yeah.
So go in and check out, do some, hunt around, see what you can find in there that you want to pick up for a great price.
Absolutely. And so, and what's, people many times will say, well, why do you charge anything at all? You get the donations for free. I hear that too often. Or I see it on social medias where it pops up. And a couple of things. People need to remember that we're paying our staff to sort through all of that. And as much as I would love for people, people don't donate with prices on it and sorted, right? And sometimes people donate things that we can't put out, which is fine. We love our donors, and we will take your stuff for you. That's what we're here for, right? And we try to give it a second chance of some sort. And so, and we've really worked hard on trying to move our wages in these last few years. And so, we have to price things for their value so we can be a good steward of their dollars so that we can provide these services for our community and be able to afford to do that.
Okay. Quick, lighthearted sidebar. What is the most exotic thing you guys have had donated?
I don't know about exotic.
Or like...
Well, did you see the story about a Goodwill in Virginia who had a vase donated and someone bought it for $3.99 and it sold for like $100,000? That's on social media. You can look that up. That just happened recently.
All right.
So sometimes,
you could be next.
Yeah, you just never know what you're going to find that we weren't aware of its value, right?
Wait, you don't have Antiques Roadshow pricing your stuff.
No. Our staff are great. Like they learn pretty quickly, like how to price things and what may have more value and what won't. but they're all humans. And so sometimes things like when I looked at the vase in the picture, I'm like, I would have never thought about that as being worth a whole lot more. You just never know what's going to get donated. We made the news around here a couple months ago. I don't know if you saw that. It looked like a grenade, but it ended up being like a training one.
I did see that.
So, I so appreciate our staff because they're like, whoa, we don't want to touch this. And so, we ask for those things not to be donated if at all possible, just because that's not, but so a lot of times what happens is that people will be donating stuff that is not necessarily theirs all the time. So we do get estate sale pieces, things like that. And so, they don't know necessarily what's all in there. And so sometimes we discover things that we didn't realize were a part of that. So, our team is really good about looking through things and figuring out what should go out there. But
that's good.
Yeah. So I don't know if I have the most exotic thought about what I've seen donated. I mean, working at 4 different Goodwills, there's always stories. Yeah.
Albeit a training. How much paperwork did that generate?
I'm not sure all the paperwork, but it did, the bomb squad had to come out to our store. And so, I'm really glad it was a good story in the sense that it ended up being a training one and it wasn't,
Did you still sell it?
No, we don't put that kind of stuff on our sales floor. So
it was just for looks.
Yeah.
Like a paperweight.
Yeah. I wouldn't want a customer to wonder that same question that we had been wondering. And so, I so appreciate our store personnel. It is not easy work to take in donations and sort through them and figure out what to do with them and, pricing them and then getting it to the sales floor. And so, I really appreciate our team and all that they do to make that happen. One thing that we've done in the last couple of years is trying to do better about connecting our own staff with services. And so in the recent couple of years, we've had a few of our staff get their high school diplomas and just really, seeing a benefit of working for Goodwill is that we're going to support you through that, and being a part of our team and figuring out along the way, if you want to come to Goodwill to work for 2 or 3 years so you can get your high school diploma and you can get a certification and then go pursue your passion, great. We would love to have you and support you in that process. But if you want to come work for us and do those same things and then move into leadership within our organization, great. Let's invest in you. And so we really want to be that environment where people can come, be themselves, and know that they will be invested in as people, whatever that means for them. And if that means we're saying goodbye to you and good luck in a couple of years because you're ready for that next step, we will celebrate that, because that to me is forward momentum for our community and for that individual. We just want them to be successful in whatever makes sense for them.
Yeah, that's so cool. Well, what's it cost for an adult to go through the educational programs?
It's a great question. So we have a $50 materials fee, and that's for the whole year. So we enroll 4 times a year throughout an August to May timeframe. But once they pay that $50, it's good for the whole year.
Wow.
And so we really keep the costs minimal.
So this really is subsidized.
Yes, but absolutely.
They got to kick in a little bit of their own skin in the game.
Yep. And then if someone says, I can't afford the $50, and we do have some people that say that just tells us we're going to get you to one of our success coaches immediately. We will scholarship you, but we know there's more hardships happening in your life
if you can't come up with $50.
Exactly. And so we want to make sure we understand those so you can be successful in the program. Or we might work with you and say, okay, you know what? Let's work on these things for this quarter, and then the next quarter, let's have you enroll, just so that you're able to focus and be a part of the class. And so our success coaches are instrumental with that, to help kind of walk through that with our students. So yeah, the cost is minimal. To take the tests, it's over $100 a test. We also have programs to scholarship that if we can. If you work for us, we pay those for you.
Oh, okay.
And so one of the benefits we actually added just this last year was, if you work for us, we will pay your materials fee and we will pay your testing fees to get your high school diploma while you're working for us. So
Do you have any comments on the legalities of people working in the U.S.?
So, when we do English as a second language, it's part of the state is that we do not need to collect Social Security numbers. Now, if they're looking for a job, then we need to take that into account, and they can only work if they're allowed to work, right? And so, but for our classes, we don't collect that information because it's still good for people to know English, right? If they're going to be part of our country. We have been teaching citizenship classes and in hopes of helping people earn their citizenship. And again, citizenship tests are not easy. In fact, I think most of us would struggle with some of the things they have to know and learn. But we've had a number of people be successful with that. And now they're full citizens and can enjoy all the rights that are part of our country. Our employers in this area need people. And we've got a lot of hard workers that we serve in our programs. And so really trying to help connect them to employers is an important part of what we do and figure out that path. I think if we can create opportunities for people to be able to work, I think it benefits everybody. It benefits that individual and supporting their family, but it also benefits our employers who are always looking for a workforce at this point in time.
All right. So let's talk. If you have some stats on the top of your head of how many Goodwill Industries of Kansas serves, any stat you can make it up, and we're not even going to know.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I know we served over 1,900 people last year. Okay, I believe that's
through education.
Correct. Through all of our programs.
Employment
through all the programs that I talked about. So over 1,900 people. And so in our education alone, we had over 900 students engage with our education services. We normally have around between 80 and 100 graduates every year who get their high school diploma. So, and then we have a big graduation in May, and that everyone can walk no matter when they got their diploma. And so usually we'll have between 40 to 50 people choose to walk with a full cap and gown. We do the whole thing. But then they'll bring 300 to 400 people. So we usually have it at the Metroplex, and it's just a great. Many of these families have not seen a success or a celebration like this before. And so we love to provide that opportunity and have students have that chance to walk across the stage and get their high school diploma. And so I love that every May. It's one of my favorite events.
As you're talking, certainly being in a vacuum myself of other Goodwill Industries,
right?
Where does Goodwill Kansas stack up? If you were to give yourself the spectrum of Goodwill that's out there.
Yeah. So I guess it depends on how you want to stack us, right? There's mission, there's retail. So when Goodwill CEOs get together, we're all talking about the stats. That's usually what happens.
My stats better than your stats.
Yeah, exactly. So what's unique about that with Goodwill is it's easier to kind of stack our retail up against each other because those are easier metrics, right? We have a sales per square foot, and we have how many stores do you have, how many employees, that sort of thing. I'm
actually more thinking of innovation of services.
Yeah.
Because what keeps coming to mind as you talk is how being the fish in water in Wichita, you're like, I go to the Y.
Yeah.
And people are like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Because they don't understand how good our YMCAs are here.
Yeah.
They are like private health club level YMCAs. You got all kinds of stuff. They give you towels when you walk in. Well, maybe they changed that during COVID.
Yeah.
They're getting a lot of towels stolen.
Yeah.
Anyways, so, but you go to other parts of the country and they're like, what's wrong with you? Why are you looking for a Y? Yeah. Because we're so conditioned here in Wichita to really good YMCAs.
Right.
But that's what it's like. I'm like, so is this like a YMCA story? Not to take away from your branding, but like as far as how Goodwill Industries of Kansas is integrating with WSU Tech, with other educators, with a extremely well-rounded impact on our community here.
Yeah. I'd say we're part of the top 25% of Goodwills that are all kind of doing that same innovative thing as part of their own community.
Okay.
What I love about this, and again, I've worked at 4 different Goodwills, so they're all everyone has something we can learn from. And so I think the key for us as a nonprofit and business, and I think that's what's unique in the Goodwill world, we have about really 3 or 4 different business lines, if you think about it. So we are very much we focus on things a little bit differently sometimes. But the Goodwills, I've sent some of our staff to some of the Goodwills I've worked for before, because I know there are things that I learned there that our staff can learn from them as well, because they do some services a little bit differently from us. And I want them to see that perspective about, well, what does that mean for us and how could we do that better? There are Goodwills that are doing the Justice Involved services better than us right now. And so we're constantly reaching out and looking for them. And while we're doing so like Goodwill of Kentucky, they're based out of Louisville, and they do, I don't know all the details of all their programs because they're a larger Goodwill, but they've been doing it for longer than us. They serve more people. They just got a large grant to do services both in correctional facilities and outside and make that connection. And so there are Goodwills that are steps ahead of us that we're coming along behind and we can learn from.
Okay.
And the best thing about Goodwills is that because we have our own kind of assigned territories, there's not a lot of competition. And so I can reach out to a Goodwill and say, hey, we need to learn from you all. How do we want to best do that? And they will share everything. And so that's what's great. We don't have to reinvent things for the first time. We just look across the country and see who's doing what, who's getting good outcomes, and let's go find out what they're doing. And can we do that here, or can we modify that to make that work here? Because a lot of states have different rules around funding and all those pieces that are usually part of that puzzle. And so we have to take that information and decide for us here, how do we best implement that? Because it's not always going to be the same because of our rules around our funding and what that looks like. So,
okay. Remind me later. I had an idea that I want to share with you, but not on this. So
yeah, perfect.
It may be worthless, but okay. Yeah, but going from just seeing the storefront to having my mind blown of all the things you do, I'm like, wow, you guys are really kicking butt in the nonprofit space.
I really want to make sure that as a larger nonprofit, we are a good partner in the nonprofit space.
Not other nonprofits' butts.
Yes,
that's not what I meant.
I appreciate that. I wanted to make sure that was clear.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for catching that.
Yeah. People get a little sensitive about that sometimes, so I want to make sure that was clear.
And I do love how you might not have been in that meeting, but we met with what's the big obvious? See, you're having to help me with word choice today.
That's fine.
I don't know what fuse burn out, but something did today. Yeah. What's the big one? The huge nonprofit raiser for the area.
Oh, United Way?
Yeah.
Okay.
See, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, like
United Way, the Plains.
Yep. Who am I? I don't know.
Yeah.
What's my name?
Yeah.
So we were getting a doc. He was sharing with us all they do.
Right.
And one of the things they do is they help coordinate nonprofits.
Yep.
So I think the things that are going on in the nonprofit space of trying to reduce the competition.
Yeah. And duplication.
Increase collaboration. So that, yeah, we can all work together because look, this is money that's getting donated. The community's trying to make it better, not waste because people are just competing.
Yeah. And I say for us, we really try to figure out who can complement what we're doing or who can we partner with to expand what we're doing as an organization. So just really wanting to partner deeply with people. And it starts usually with a conversation, and sometimes it can take 2 to 3 years to determine what could a partnership look like. But it's getting to know one another, what each other does, how do we support one another. For a lot of nonprofits, they are providing a lot of the supportive services that we then connect our individuals to. The best thing about nonprofits working together is that we can do what are called warm handoffs, where you're not just like, here's a piece of paper, go call this person and go show up. Sure. Because 9 times out of 10, our individual will not show up there. it's stressful. There's transportation barriers. And so the more we can work together to give people kind of that warm, that soft handoff where they feel confident and comfortable that, hey, it's okay to work with this other person. Many of us don't like to share our life story all the time. Can you imagine sharing it over and over again when someone does an intake with you, right? And so to qualify for funding, you normally have to share some very personal information. But if every nonprofit you go to asks for that same information, it's hard. People go through a lot to get services. So,
right. Okay, so we have talked a whole lot about Goodwill Industries.
Yes.
Let's talk about Laura.
Oh, I like talking about Goodwill, but that's okay. Talk about Laura too.
we obviously there's more we could talk about.
Yeah.
Okay, but I really am interested in Laura.
Yeah.
Laura the CEO, Laura the everything else. What would be maybe if you were to think back on your career, okay, what's maybe a really impactful lesson? Because one of the things we talk about here is the growth journey of either an entrepreneur or professionals at a high level, whatever, and then also just the personal journey as well. But what's a really key lesson that you've learned that's impacted you and been formative in your career journey?
So I think there'd be a couple. One would be the importance of experiential learning.
Okay.
Through my undergraduate and graduate, I had so many opportunities to experience what the job could be like in working in the nonprofit field. And even in my master's program, I had a chance to work with other professionals who were already in that field, but I was doing some teaching and some training, which I probably had no business doing, but there was this sense of confidence in us as future professionals to be able to do those things. And so when I think about, people at our organization and other, younger individuals that are starting their career, it's really important for us to provide them with those same opportunities, right? How do we give them a little bit more so they can experience something? What kind of mentoring are we providing? What kind of experiential learning? Even with my youngest son now, just trying to figure out what he's going to do after high school. And so, we've been trying to figure out how do we expose him to those jobs and opportunities in a way that it's not just reading something on a paper, right? But it is actively experiencing it or shadowing somebody. And so that was really impactful for me, because if I wouldn't have had those opportunities, I probably would have taken a different route, because it exposed me to something that created a passion for what I do. And then the other piece was investing in employees to give them what they need.
You said investing really confidently, and then you kept talking. I was like, she's going to talk about investing.
No, not that kind of investing.
Okay, all right. Investing in employees.
Yeah, and so whether that's investing time, investing in their next steps in their leadership development. All along the way, so when I was in Indiana, I was afforded lots of opportunities to go to conferences and engage with other professionals. I was green. I was right out of master's degree. I'd never really, this was my first full career, real job. And so having those opportunities just starts to expose you to how things work, right, in the system that you're in. And then in Nebraska, they invested in me to go through a senior leadership program through Goodwill Industries International, which allowed me time for self-reflection and really developing myself as a leader and what does that look like. And then when I was in Kansas City at that Goodwill, I went through the executive development program. So again, developing towards being a CEO. And I really want to make sure we're affording those same opportunities for our staff. And we are not there yet as an organization. And some days I'm really frustrated about that, but we're trying to figure out what does that path look like and how do we create those opportunities. So for some of our staff, professional development is getting your high school diploma, right? or we get some of those. We received another grant this year from the KLC to do their leadership training. And so we make sure those types of opportunities get to those more front level management, assistant manager type folks to give them that leadership training. But then we're also sending people to that same senior leadership training that I went through when I was in Nebraska. And so, we're trying to develop all those levels of professional opportunities, because nothing's worse than feeling like you're stuck where you are because you're not being invested in as a person. And so I want to make sure we're providing that for our employees as well, because that was really important for me and for my journey.
Okay.
So
if there were one, and maybe this isn't even a fair question at all. If there was like a linchpin of, you're like, man, if I didn't have that in my life as I've developed, I would not be where I'm at. What do you think is that key piece of development for you, or influence?
Wow, that's a big question.
I said it might not even be a fair question.
To me, it's never been just one thing. I'm a woman of faith, and that's always a part of that. Just seeking that journey about what is God calling me to do. But it's also been my family. I mean, you can't take this journey without the support of your family. So, my husband has been really supportive about my career journey and being able to get to this point. And not everybody has that. I think my upbringing, I grew up on a small farm outside of a small town in Illinois. And, even my dad every once in a while now will be like, I don't know how I have a CEO as a daughter. And I'm like, absolutely, you should know how. You're a hard worker. You were the CEO of the farm, right? And so running all of that and just teaching that work ethic of you stick to it till you get it done, right? You can't just let it go. And so I think all of those things, all the mentors along the way have been, the first person that hired me in it is Goodwill. He's a CEO now out in Eugene, Oregon, Jim Martin. And so I always appreciate the fact that he took a chance on this green college girl who didn't really know what it meant to be in a large nonprofit and started my journey. And so there's been so many people along the way that have been a part of that. So that's where it's really not one. There are so many factors that play into that all those pieces fit.
So cool. So your dad saw you as a CEO as you're grown up.
Well, no.
Here's what I heard you say.
Okay, so maybe
you were the CEO of the farm.
He was
the CEO of the farm.
So because now he's just like, I can't believe that, I have a daughter who's a CEO of a company. And so, but when I reflect back, he ran the farm, which means, and you're the CEO of that organization, right? And so just kind of made things happen. And, but he, I think has been surprised sometimes about where some of our journeys have taken us. And I think part of that is in our family, my generation was the first generation to go to college. And I didn't really reflect on that a whole lot until I've gotten into the Goodwill, kind of family and think about even some of our students going through. And sometimes I forget to share that I'm a first generation college student. Yeah. It's okay. And you got to start somewhere. Right. And, so anyway, it's been a good journey.
My wife is a first generation American.
That's awesome.
I know it just dumped that on you. Right now,
but that's awesome. Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Actually, how does this work? So she was a kid when she immigrated. Is she first or they came in together? Know. We can call it first, right?
I think first.
I think that counts.
Yeah,
it counts.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
I think that works fine. And, like my grandmother came over from the Netherlands on a boat when she was 3 or 4. And so it wasn't too far removed from my family as well. And I think that's part of, when we talk about our, English as a second language classes and some of those pieces is just helping people to feel welcome. Like
Totally.
you're loved here, you're appreciated, you're valued as a person, and we're just here to support you and walk with you along the way. And so it's been, I love our ESL celebrations. I happen to be out of town on this last one we just had in December. We celebrate people who've achieved certain milestones in their English journey, but all of our students, it's a potluck, and so they bring in a lot of the ethnic dishes, and it's just wonderful to kind of see the camaraderie they've developed over that 2 quarters of being together as students from all these different countries, and the fellowship that happens on those evenings and those events. So it's pretty amazing. I love going out into our break room and just hearing all sorts of languages being spoken at break time, especially for our first time students, because they don't know enough English to speak in English yet at the break table, right? So you're hearing all of these wonderful languages. And so it's a wonderful feeling.
Yeah, that's so fun. And here's what I get from you as you talk about all of this with Goodwill is you really love these people.
Yeah.
And that's the best part to me is that you're not just here repping the brand. You're not just here having fun, recording on a podcast, getting interrupted constantly. But you really love the people that you serve.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. I love it.
Things don't happen without people. And what I have found over the years is that people who have not been valued or loved or given the pride or dignity before of work, they're behaving in a way because of a reason, right? And even for our employees, a lot of people have trauma in their past. And so I do. I love the people we serve. I love our employees. They work so hard every day to help make things happen, whether it be at a store or if they're working in our admin office or they're working in our mission services and serving people who are, sometimes going through some real struggles. I just so appreciate all that they do each and every day. It makes things happen. And I enjoy being able to see the fruits of their labor. Being students graduating, staff members who are being promoted. I love when we have an opportunity where someone is promoted to the manager of a store and then their assistant is now like, okay, are you ready to manage this store? And so I love seeing that movement within our team for people to have that professional growth. It's all about people.
Cool.
So,
yeah. Well, it is.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a question that I asked all guests. So you're not being singled out on this one. Some of them you were.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
This one, though, what does it look like for you to live the best life possible with the time you have left?
For me, it would be to see, my boys who are 20 and 17, be their most successful self, and investing in them, including time, which I'm not always as good at. For me, it would also be seeing the growth of our organization in the sense that the impact we have becomes that much greater. I really have this sense of purpose to create that ripple effect change that will change the trajectory of the people that we serve, which then continues to change the trajectory of their family, and that we can really start to see generational impact because of what we're doing. I feel like I have a multifaceted answer, which is always the way I answer questions. Typically, it's not one thing. And I think for me, too, would also be to see that our organization is able to do those intensive services to support people in every community that we have a store. So while we have partnerships now in a lot of those areas, I really want to figure out how do we best support that community? What does that look like? And, I guess that all sounds like it's revolving around other people, but I think that's part of who I am, that if those things aren't going well, it means that I'm not there to support the people I need to be there to support. And that's really what it's about. It's supporting my family and my organization to be able to do that growth and that impact so that people can have changed lives and have the opportunities that I've been afforded that many of them haven't had that chance to have afforded to them. So yeah, I mean, to me, it's just all about the feel good stuff. I just want to see that we're creating change in the world around us.
Yeah. Pay it forward.
So, absolutely.
That's really awesome. And at some point, maybe they'll force you to retire, and then you'll have to pick something else.
That's right.
Or you'll be back in, managing, riding the counter. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. I don't think they want me managing the counter. That's not my skill set. But I do enjoy, a bit of travel, some of that as well. It's just your stage of life really dictates about how much of that you can really do and do it well.
Sure.
But yeah,
so don't work too long.
Yeah. To be able to do some of that. But family's really important. And so being able to spend time with them my Goodwill is my family as well. And
sure.
I've got Goodwill family across the country. And so that's kind of the neat part about that as well, as you create colleagues and connections across the country. It's really impactful.
Every time I ask that question, it almost always seems to come back to relationships. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's what's really amazing.
Yeah.
And I just, you triggered kind of another thought is I think there's something to how important relationships are to us, based on how much they let us pour into them. Mm-hmm. Because you can't get the depth if you don't have there's not an opportunity to fill needs or something. Right. So like something I struggle with is, okay, like if I need something, I have this bad habit of just going and getting it.
Right.
Okay. But then if I have everything I need, then, now, my wife can't get it for me.
Right.
Okay. Or if she has everything she needs, I can't, it's hard for me to get something for her. Mm-hmm. But like, obviously you work in an organization where there's a lot of needs.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And so that makes sense that you are deeply invested in what you're doing and you certainly have the heart for it. But yeah, it's just maybe an awareness thing of, as we're building relationships wherever we're at, to be vulnerable, to have some needs, and look for how we can meet other people's needs.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's hard to create change and impact without being relational. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, even in our community, when we think about the nonprofits working together, those of us that have created partnerships, you don't create a partnership without a relationship first. And so I really appreciate the team that I have right now, really over the last couple of years, giving me the time to spend in the community to create relationship, because relationship breeds trust, which breeds the ability to really work well together. And that could be between organizations, or it could be between a success coach and a student, right? Mm-hmm. That relationship creates trust, that I can trust this person with either my information and I can share with them more, or I can trust them to give me the right steps to do next. And so relationships is definitely what it comes down to.
Yeah. What, if we got to wind this down, because we keep talking. We could talk for a long time.
Probably.
What's maybe a personal lesson that you've learned over time? So you talked about leadership, you talked about, some of that, but what's maybe a personal life lesson?
Yeah. To really listen, when you first start getting into leadership positions, you think you've got it all, you know all the answers, and to create a culture where people feel loved, valued, respected. My lesson has been all around listening, and that goes to your family. It goes to colleagues. It goes if you're a leader and you've got a team reporting to you. You've got to listen because you're never going to know everything. It's just not going to be the case. And so being willing to listen and take advice from others or feedback that you need to change something or do something differently, it's really important in every aspect of life.
So as I talk to people who actually are far down their career path or have had business success or at a high level, one of the things that's really common is the more you know or the more you pay attention, the more you realize you don't know.
Exactly.
And so I might, if I could take that maybe one step further and say, if you think you know, you have no idea how much you don't know.
Right.
And if you think you know, that's a telltale sign that you're not actually good at listening. And it's maybe an area of personal growth.
Yeah, I think we all have our areas where we feel like we can be subject matter experts, right? There's a little bit more than others in some of that. And then, but even when you're a subject matter expert, there's usually something new that'll come up like, I didn't think about that. I didn't think about it that way before, right? And so absolutely, you will constantly learn throughout your life, and you need to be open to that and realizing you're never going to be the 100% expert on everything that's going on, even if you lead the company.
I relate to your comments on being educated and green. And I was the most dangerous financial planner when I was a new certified financial planner because I knew.
Right.
And that's what made me dangerous is I wasn't curious is to, okay, if I have the smart, I'm using air quotes here, smartest financial plan for this person, and they're not going to follow through on it because I don't understand them. There's the whole like behavioral side of things that I had no clue about. I had to go through a really long, I'm still on it, learning curve of all that stuff. But cool. Well, yeah. So if, you're listening, which I guess you would know, you wouldn't hear me say that if you weren't listening. So obviously you're listening.
Yeah.
You might just ask yourself, how much do I think I know in this situation? And if you do think you know, be like, what's a question I could ask to stay curious?
Absolutely.
Cool. Laura, do you have any closing thoughts? Did we miss anything? Or we didn't, did we talk about the myths? We talked about sending stuff over to Africa.
We talked a little bit about the myths. I mean, I think, I'm a local CEO. There's something that goes around that, the CEO is national, not from here, and makes all kinds of money. I'm a local nonprofit CEO.
Perfect.
I'm based in Wichita. Everything that is sold from and through our stores stays within our territory and footprint. And so, everything is local. It stays here. It doesn't go to some national, kind of big Goodwill or whatever.
Yeah.
I think I think we covered a lot of the myths along the way. We're a nonprofit. We're not a for-profit company.
Not a nonprofit disguised as for-profit.
Right.
Exactly.
For-profit disguised. Yeah, right. Because there are a number of thrift stores that are for-profit thrift stores, and they give a small portion to nonprofits, but 90 cents of every dollar coming through our stores comes back to support the mission.
And I bet they keep your income capped under $5 million or so.
Yeah, a lot more than that, but a lot lower than that, I should say. Sorry, that came out totally wrong. They cap it lower than that. Okay. Let's say that way. But we have a local board of directors, so they're all, they're people from Wichita that people would know, and
they're making wise decisions with the resources.
Yep. Yeah,
we can trust that.
Exactly. Okay. So that came out very wrong.
We're not going to clip that to a highlight reel.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So I think that, I continue to want to strive in this community and in our territory to help people know better about what we do as an organization, so they know that when they're giving to Goodwill, they're giving to something good, and that we're being good stewards of their donations, whether it be a financial donation or a clothing donation. That we're being good stewards of those donations.
And see, that's what seeing, hearing, experiencing all that in the tour, like that's what I was like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
Like now I know that I can give in good conscience, good faith, that my, this is going to go where I'd like it to.
Yep, absolutely.
And not get hijacked.
Yeah.
Which is what the myths are all about.
Yeah, yeah. The myths just are they are definitely myths. I just always encourage people, if you see something posted on social media, please go check the facts, because the facts are usually different than what's presented. And so our website is a great place to go to see what we do, and give us a call. Love to give you a tour and show you what we're all about. And
if you need to get some volunteer hours in,
yep, we have that opportunity as well. Yeah, we've got volunteer opportunities. People can volunteer at our stores if they want to. I mean, that's just kind of people enjoy that. There's a lot of fun with that. But we have our contracts area. Sometimes we have opportunities to have conversations with our English as a second language students to help them practice English. So there's all sorts of different ways that people can volunteer with the organization.
Right. Nice. Because you're a nonprofit. You're not a for-profit. People can
legally
volunteer at a nonprofit.
Yes.
If they legally volunteer at a for-profit, that's called slave labor, and it's frowned upon in most societies.
Yeah, we are a nonprofit. So we love our volunteers. We had a group in yesterday that was coming in, and so it was just, they have a great opportunity to interact with a lot of our clients and also do some work along the way, and so it's a lot of fun.
Cool. Well, Laura, thank you so much. And I've really enjoyed just seeing how much you love what you do and the people that you do it for, and love the people you serve,
right?
And doing it. So it's so fun. It's so fun to see that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Always appreciate the opportunity to tell Goodwill's story, so we can dispel some of those myths that are out there about what we do as an organization.
Well, good.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, that'll wrap up this episode of Real Wealth Podcast here with Laura Ritterbusch. Dang it, I missed.
You missed
I was so close earlier. I was like, it's
you did it fine earlier, or Ritterbusch. That'll be a clip to edit.
Yeah. That's what that's for.
Yeah, exactly. We're always grateful for that.
Yeah, seriously. That'll wrap up this episode of Real Wealth Podcast with CEO of Goodwill Industries of Kansas, Laura Ritterbusch, with a Ritter. Got to get it right.
Yeah.
Ritterbusch. And so just quick recap. Bottom line is Goodwill does a whole lot of good in our community here in Kansas, and I'm sure in the community of wherever you're listening from, if it's not in this area. Talked about the importance of relationships, leadership, investing in your people, and helping them to succeed, and dispelling some of the myths. Who starts these things anyways? I don't know. But the myths of like, if you donate, it's not going to help your community or this community, whatever, but don't worry about it. It's good. So thank you so much. Sponsored by Real Wealth Real Wealth Podcast, sponsored by Leading Edge Financial Planning. We help people make wise financial decisions, and we're here to help you have the best life possible at the time you have left. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.